on to week two's kickoff match. We're going to start things off with lnguagehackr versus Zalae, and it's going to be some fun action back and forth. They do share a couple of similar classes and a few different. We'll get into it momentarily. But to start things off, lnguagehackr back for another top 8. And I think, we're talking about how some of the new blood in Grandmasters, they should be making waves, right? Because this first wave of Grandmasters that get ushered in, if you don't really count Gown, who replaced Dog after Season 1, they are some of the hungriest, right? They've been the ones competing and grinding. We did have some grandfathered people who had historically been performing really well into Grandmasters. And so how does some of that new blood go up against the old guard? And lnguagehackr is part of that. He recently, towards the end of HCT and the end of that open system, lnguagehackr had been doing very well. So, I keep rooting for him because I feel like he is part of that new wave of Hearthstone players that are extremely good and just need a chance to prove themselves.
Yeah, talking about new blood, we had Empanizado win week 1, and he is one of the new Grandmasters coming into Americas. We did have 3, but lnguagehackr also made top 8. So the players to watch for sure. And I think that also I've spent more time with him or talked to him a lot more over the past year because he casts a lot, and I was the person who was trying to organize that and get him to Taiwan to cast Asia Pacific, and he's just such a smart and level-headed guy. And that goes a long way when you're playing this many Hearthstone matches across 7 weeks. High stakes Hearthstone matches across 7 weeks is being able to just be composed and taking one match at a time. And that's where players draw their consistency from is that composure. And I think that's one of his strengths, and I hope to see that play through as we move through different formats in Swiss, and then once we get to the round robin where your prep can be a lot more targeted. So definitely a player to watch. And in my top 3 players to watch for Grandmasters in 2020 for Americas.
Yes, that's right. So we'll talk more about lnguagehackr in just a second. For now, let's go ahead and focus on the number 1 performer throughout week 2 of Swiss. It is Zalae, formerly from OmniSlash, and I believe just kind of riding solo for now. We're going to have our T-Mobile deck spotlight featuring Zalae's Priest, which I believe will be featured in game number 1 here. And it is a Control Resurrect Priest, which has basically taken the mantle as one of the best control decks currently in the metagame, although I guess the Control Warrior that we've been seeing today could possibly have a say about that. And, when you look at this deck list, it looks fairly similar to the deck list that we were running before, except no more Bad Luck Albatross being played anymore, TJ, since the nerf.
Yeah, it's a little more expensive. You have more stuff that you'd like to do on 4 mana than play the Albatross. And I think overall, it's a positive change, not only for, just the deck in general, because I think that it, allows you more opportunity to throw in things such as Murazan, which I believe is one of the best cards in the deck. It gives you more flexibility with your removal spells, allows you to tech in more early game AoEs like Holy Nova and Breath of the Infinite. But also, it's a good change for the deck for us, Dan, for me and for you and for the viewer out there, because it means that the games on average are slightly shorter and less annoying because players aren't just drawing Albatross. Granted, some turns, some of the most exciting turns we've had in the past couple months have been an Albatross drawn off the top, whether it was a key moment where a player needed something big or a draw that activated a Zephrys or a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. So even though we do get the slightly shorter games with less of that kind of nonsense going on with Albatross being drawn for multiple turns in a row, some of those exciting turns were off the back of that. But I do think that the deck is still in a good spot, and Priest is rising in popularity. It's also rising in strength as far as win rates go.
Yeah, Priest is so good at answering some of that early aggression, but we'll see if it's able to stay strong, almost as strong as your mobile connection with T-Mobile, helping you stay connected to what matters most, nationwide 5G, as we also take a look at what lnguagehackr is playing. But I actually heard some of the tests or perhaps some of the innkeepers talking with each other, TJ. That is game sound. We're ready to go into game number 1 between Language Hacker and Zalae.
Look at that.
Wow.
I saw they had an
Stone.
interaction. They had that interaction on Twitter earlier where Zalae said that he was dressing up today, and Language Hacker said, "I didn't know we were dressing up. I'm not prepared." Well, it looks like he got prepared because he's matching him, and I would say that he's even winning because he has the tie. He's got the full getup.
Oh, yeah.
And Zalae's going a little more casual today. No tie.
Yeah, looks like open collar, no tie. Zalae with what looks like to be a very nice, clean look, but a little bit of an amateur rookie mistake. You're not supposed to button your suit when you're sitting down, so you can let it breathe a little bit, so you can avoid those indents or folds, rather, close to the lapel. So,
well spotted.
Zalae, I would say he is a Grandmaster top legend player in Americas, and I would say that he's like a mid-legend suit dresser, I guess, or businessman. But in all seriousness, I really love that they're dressed up. In fact, they're better dressed than the casters, to be honest. I probably should go put on some suits. Language Hacker looks like he's trying to apply for an internship at Blizzard.
Yeah, well,
I like that. All right, so we're going to start things off with the Spell Druid, which has seen a significant nerf with Kael'thas going from 6 to 7 mana. That does slow it down by a turn, which you might think, well, you have innervates and coins and ways to ramp there, so is it that big of a deal? And I would say not a huge impact, but it still does have a sizable impact for those tighter turns where you feel like you need to get onto the board immediately. But when you're like ramping Overgrowth into Kael'thas, it still feels relatively the same.
Yeah, oftentimes you're not playing Kael'thas until later on in the game anyway. Especially playing it before turn 7 was quite rare because your Bog Beam and your Iron Bark weren't even active until you got to that 7 mana point anyway. But time will tell how impactful the nerf ended up being. One card that I did want to highlight that's made its way into a few of the Spell Druid decks this week. I know Language Hacker's one, Eddie is another, maybe even more. Ysera Unleashed has made its way into the deck. Now, granted, it is Spell Druid, we call it that. It does have Fungal Fortunes, which can punish you for running too many minions. But at the same time, Ysera Unleashed is a great way to have an additional board refill once your Kael'thas turn or your Glowfly Swarms, your Exotic Mountaineer turns have been dealt with. Because normally, once all that stuff has been dealt with, you're very deep into your deck, and Ysera Unleashed plus card draw source means you're drawing through all your portals. Yeah. So it's just another wave, and sometimes that wave can come in little spurts. And I love how much gas it gives you, especially in some of the slower matchups that pack a lot of removal, like Priest, for instance.
Yeah, Priest does have Breath of the Infinite and Holy Nova as 2 damage AoE options at their disposal. The important thing about Breath of the Infinite is that it is cheaper and can damage enemies only if you're holding a dragon. But Zalae is just going to hold off on it for a while because those are some premium removal tools that you can use against Glowfly Swarm, for example. Although, if you are Language Hacker, would you be playing Rising Winds so aggressively on the board for tempo without drawing a single card on either of the twin spell casts if you were holding Glowfly Swarm? I would argue no.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not really a secret here that Language Hacker doesn't have follow-up to this, but at the same time, can he afford to just kind of leave it as is? And that's the question that Language Hacker sort of asking Zalae is, are you really going to expend a resource in dealing with this when your removal resources are, crucial to, trying to make sure you have checks for each individual wave of threats that I'm going to go for. I do like it from Language Hacker, though. He has Overflow. He's got a Kael'thas turn coming up. Having a Rising Winds in your hand makes things very awkward as far as hand size goes, because if you draw a card with it, it doesn't expend a card to draw a card. When you have the twin spell, it just adds a card, and that can be really awkward. And you can tell that Language Hacker is setting up for some type of Kael'thas plus Overflow turn, since he's trying to keep his hand relatively empty. And he can actually go off right now. He's got 2 0-mana spells plus the coin and a crystal power. So he's got 2 guaranteed big spell resets with Kael'thas this turn if he wants it.
Yeah, and you saw him kind of take a step back and have a deep breath, because with that Innervate draw, that gives him a ton of options, and it's likely that he's going to be able to pick up huge board cementing cards like Soul of the Forest and Gift of the Wild. And so now Zalae is going to wait and see what comes out of this overflow.
I like this sequencing from lnguagehackr because it doesn't. If he went with the crystal power first to activate the overflow, it would mean he would have to commit the attack with the 3/2, or else the overflow would heal it back up.
Right.
So this is a good. If he knows he's going to be playing that coin anyway at some point in the turn, it's better to use the spells that don't damage minions before the overflow. So that way, once you draw cards, you can reevaluate and see whether or not you want to commit these minion attacks otherwise.
Yeah, really, really interesting. You know, lnguagehackr had the opportunity to maybe continue to go off, right? Because he had Fungal Fortunes and the Ironbark with 3 of his minions actually already drawn from his deck. But he was running out of time, and I think in the interest of also just ensuring that he had plays with the Mount Seller, I think this is more than justified. Zalae doesn't have the double Breath of the Infinite, and keep in mind he still has to answer Kael'thas in a way. So this is a tough spot for Zalae. He really would love to do everything, which is remove the board, you know, stop Kael'thas from going off. But now lnguagehackr gets a full turn.
Oh. A full turn and draws a Soul of the Forest, which is actually I'm not sure if he wants to play this turn. What it would protect him against would be... actually, it's not necessary, because the only removals that can come out would be Holy Nova Breath of the Infinite, and I think Zalae showed that he didn't have double Breath of the Infinite. But, you know, at this point, he might as well just play it, because he draws the second one, and it just fills up his mana nicely after the Fungal Fortune, so he can just keep his board as is, and... Oh, this is... This is starting to get rough.
Yeah, lnguagehackr gets a free overflow number 2. He's going to be burning a card, I believe. It's Wild Growth, so no harm, no foul there. Wild Growth is great with Kael'thas if you can get it off, because the Wild Growth and the excess mana will lend itself very nicely to both. And lnguagehackr has a free spell, but does he even want to play anything? Okay, I guess he can capitalize onto this free Rising Winds.
Yep, might as well. He's got the hand space for it. The only way I could see him wanting to hold on to that is maybe for a post Ysera Unleash, since he already has used both overflows. That'll help like draw portals immediately, or you know, the turn following. But right now, it just seems like Zalae doesn't even have answers to this. Well, double Breath of the Infinite.
That helps.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 4 power off board. And sets up for potentially a Holy Nova cleanup next turn to buy him some time for the Plague of Death if he draws it, because those 2 9-mana spells in hand are both Mass Resurrection. And that's one. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, with Zalae's deck construction is that he's opted to play all 4 of the 9-mana spells. He plays double Mass Resurrection and double Plague of Death, and obviously it worked well for him, considering, you know, he was 6-0 in Swiss going to last round, only lost in round 7, and went 6-1. But it, you know, it has been a point of contention among many players that are playing Priest right now. Is can you afford to, you know, be that greedy with your 9-mana spells?
Yep, that's all fair points, TJ, but, you know, I'm pretty sure lnguagehackr can find a way to win this turn, right?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
got 2 Bog Beam, Savage Roar, and Gift of the Wild. That sounds more than enough to answer this.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, the Convincing Infiltrator hits his highest powered minion, which would be the Kael'thas. He would still have 26, 27, 28.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, even if it hits the highest powered minion, this is legal.
But it's good that he counted just in case, and that's what you need to do. Remember, the third spell is also the free one, so good sequencing from him. And that will do it. It was a high likelihood that Druid was going to have these finisher cards anyways, given that lnguagehackr drew 25 cards, while Zalae he drew his 10th card of the deck. So a 15-card advantage seems like a pretty substantial one. And lnguagehackr looking sharp, both in and out of game, starting off the series with a win.
Yeah, that's right. It gives us I think that was a smile. I'm not 100% sure. It looked like one. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Smirk,
that was a smile.
maybe, perhaps.
Yeah. But so far, Dan, we are one game in, and it seems like the nerf to Kael'thas didn't do anything. He still went off right on time with Kael'thas, and I did like, though, basically the Rising Winds early on in the game to go for the 3/2s instead. It gave him the hand space to do all those crazy plays and not overdraw too much. Also put on some pressure and gave him some options in that mid portion of the game to push a little bit of extra damage and force Zalae into even more awkward spots. So definitely well played, but honestly, hard for Zalae to do much there. And now his priest is off the table, and lnguagehackr will go on Spell Druid again for game number 2. Last hero standing. It's good to be back.
That's right. So with Last Hero Standing, if you've never watched this format before, the winning deck stays on, as opposed to the winning deck being checked off, if you will, for Conquest. So, you could see this Druid win 3 times in a row if Zalae doesn't have an answer ready. And that's kind of how the tree works for a lot of players. They really try to make sure that their first deck can either start off really well on a good foot and perhaps get that sweep started with that momentum, or you also have people who sometimes start their worst deck in the beginning and then just have counters prepared. lnguagehackr going off with the Fungal Fortunes and discarding the Mount Seller. That's a little bit unfortunate, but not backbreaking by any means. He could still do this easily if he gets a really powerful Kael'thas turn.
Yeah, it does pick up the growth, so that's a bonus. Gets to ramp up a little bit and expedite his power turns. And like I said, he still has the multiple waves of Glowfly Swarms. He still has the Ysera Unleash, so it's not like he's super in the hole where he doesn't have any reloads whatsoever after Exotic Mount Seller if he only plays one.
That's right. And he has the Rising Winds to start things off, and it seems like he values pressure early on. It says some card draw because, remember, he does have Overflow. So if he spends one of his cards being more aggressive against the mage, that Overflow won't overdraw, which was, a problem that he had. Interestingly enough, Drew drew 25 cards and only burned 1 card, but I'm sure lnguagehackr's thinking, I wish I could have even had a little bit more efficiency with my card draw. So, I think not that he would change anything the way he played last game, but it's definitely something in the back of his mind.
Yeah, and still keeping along with the theme here. Soul of the Forest on a Power of the Wild and 2 Rising Winds Eagles. Not something you see very often, but I like the play, and especially for the exact reasons you just mentioned and that we talked about last game. It's about hand management and trying to pressure mage early, which that's kind of when you need to pressure them, since they have a lot of that late game value and late game removal packed into the deck.
Yeah, so now if you're Zalae, how do you best answer this? Do you take it slow and perhaps, just use the Twilight Drake and put him on janitorial duty to clean up all of these annoying birds and creatures onto the board? Or do you perhaps try to stop it right now and prevent yourself from taking too much damage so that you're within critical strike range? He does have access to the coin this turn, but with so many expensive cards, it makes me feel like you want to save it for a more impactful board swing.
Yeah, I don't know. I do like the development, just because he could tell that overflow's coming. Language Hacker's been emptying his hand and going into turn 7, and if he goes face, that damage is wasted. If he tries and plays the removal plan, then he's just going to be met with a dead turn anyway. So he might as well just play a big minion, make the turn a little bit more awkward for Language Hacker, and the fact that he doesn't want to really preemptively attack these minions because overflow will heal him back up. So I do like the trade and development, because that's the best thing going into an overflow turn.
Oh my.
Oh geez.
Well,
All right.
Kael'thas with a full hand and cheap spells means that Language Hacker next turn could really pop off and build up a board that's hard for Mage to deal with.
Yeah,
And
the
Zalae
only
just-
issue I see is that he only has 3 spell activators for the Kael'thas, which means he can't go for the full play, and he would have 4 if it was 6 mana. He could go all the way off next turn.
So next turn, he would play like Moonfire Innervate card, and then Ironbark Power the Wild card, but it's a little bit out of sequence. Because you kind of want to play Power the Wild after you finish summoning everything.
Yeah.
But
He
if
has
he
no
plays
card
Glowfly
draw.
Swarm first. Yeah, the
Yeah.
lack of card draw is definitely annoying, but not that Language Hacker could use much of it right now either, until he starts dumping.
Oh,
Okay.
well, the Innervate helps.
Yeah, so it's really up to Language Hacker how much he wants to extend onto the board here. If he really wants to commit basically his entire hand, he could.
Except for what? 1 Glowfly Swarm, right?
Yeah, and at that point you're straining the other Glowfly Swarm. Perhaps instead you would want to slowly extend onto the board. So what does that look like? Is that just 1 Glowfly Swarm now and apply pressure, like trade into everything now, and then play Glowfly Swarm, and then just present this threat and make your opponents use something like their Blizzards to try and deal with the board? Or do we go off now with Kael'thas? And it looks like Language Hacker is saying, I want to just build up the board now because, well, I mean, I want to set up an opportunity to kill my opponent. And I think that's entirely reasonable.
And do you go with Gift of the Wild or Soul of the Forest?
Oh, I probably want to go... If you buff everything to 3/3, isn't it better to do Gift of the Wild?
No, I think you're right, because Gift of the Wild is... I don't know. What could punish you here? A puzzle box?
Well, Puzzle Box is always to punish no matter what state of the game it is.
Yeah, but that would be more resilient to puzzle box, I guess.
Yeah, so... Okay, it is Zephyrus specifically, because Zephyrus would play Brawl, and then Brawl would summon back a big board. I was thinking about like the punish, like what if your opponent like played Blizzard or something else with that, but doesn't have enough mana for the spell damage variant of it. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Zalae has the Astromancer Solarian in his deck, which would have been spell damage to buff his minions.
Yeah.
But either way, I think he's playing around a lot of what Zalae could do. So I do like this choice a lot.
Yeah, and it also, guarantees him, or maybe not guarantees him, but it gives him the best possibility to be able to follow it up with Gift of the Wild. Because even if this wave of the board is cleared, it means that he has another wave for Gift of the Wild.
Oh, interesting. I was kind of anticipating Zalae going for a Blizzard and the Doomsayer, but he's very astutely observing that, one, he's not actually in threat of dying from what he sees on the board. So he feels like he is comfortable enough to take this damage without dying. And two, he gets to save the coin for an even bigger swing, which is he gets the Blizzard next turn and then coin into the amazing Reno to make all of those minions disappear. However, if that doesn't pay off, Language Hacker might just deal enough damage anyways.
He does have a good amount of it, but if he expends, say, Gift of the Wild to go for more damage right now, it means he doesn't have Gift of the Wild to push for lethal damage later on. He also has one less spell for Glowfly Swarm. If he's, you know, considering that Zalae is holding onto the coin for a very specific reason, then he knows that this board may go away to Reno in the near future. And also, he wasn't 100% sure if that was Flame Ward, I guess?
Yes. That is a good point.
There's actually no Flame Ward in Zalae's deck.
Yeah.
So he was 100% sure. I guess if he wasn't sure if it was Flame Ward, it'd make more sense to give to the Wild. So.
Right. Unless there's a randomly generated card that we're missing here, but I don't think so. There wasn't an Arcane Breath played, for example.
Nope.
So now Language Hacker's thinking, okay, my opponent's been saving coin this entire game, so he's got to be gearing up for something like the coin Amazing Reno to make all those minions disappear. And that's going to be a dramatic swing onto the board. I think Language Hacker just knows he's going to do this, so instead of playing Gift of the Wild for free, he's just going to pass it over. And I think Zalae may have turned the corner with this Reno play. Very well done and navigated by Zalae.
Watch closely as I make everyone.
He is smart as he is handsome in that suit.
And he's got so much follow-up. He's got both Alexstrasza's, Calico, Siamond. He's got pretty much all the big stuff in his deck. And he's also still at 33 life, which after that crazy of a Gale's turn, after taking some damage from the Rising Wind minions earlier, ends up being a great position for Zalae. And this is only a Glowfly Swarm follow-up, and also one thing to note is that Language Hacker has no more Souls of the Forest. He used both, one on the Rising Winds board and one on that Kael'thas plus Glowfly Swarm board. So he doesn't have a way to make his board more resilient outside of Gift of the Wild, because both of his power over the Wilds are gone too. He still has Ysera Unleashed somewhere in his deck though, and that's one thing that we have to keep in the back of our minds, is that he could get a huge burst onto the board with a lot of dragons at some point in this game.
Yeah, and he's going to try his best to extend onto it, but Zalae should be able to take care of it. No meaningful impact from the Reno spell that he gets. At the beginning of your turn, Amazing Reno will cast a random spell in a random direction. Utter chaos, but if you're looking for a Hail Mary, sometimes it just straight up wins you the game. Very thematic, as our Reno kind of plays for himself, both as a legendary hero of the League of Explorers and also as a very greedy archaeologist. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's behind the Calico's door.
Oof.
Pretty mediocre stuff, all things considering.
Yeah. Arcane Breath's a choice, but not coming out this turn. It's just to, you know, re-up for a Blizzard or some type of AoE going into the following turns.
And all of a sudden, if Language Hacker had drawn Savage Roar, that was like a small window where Language Hacker could put out what I felt like was potentially game-ending damage. Right now, if he gets to the Wild, he has 6 minions that can attack. So 6 minions times 2 is 12, plus another 12, so 24. Can he...
25 with the Moonfire.
25. 26 with the Hero Power.
We're close, Dan. We're very close.
Is there an opportunity to draw it off the top with Rising Winds? No, you don't have enough mana at that point.
Yeah, wouldn't be enough mana. No Kael'thas available. Oh, I mean, there it is.
One card off.
Time waits for no one.
So, how does Language Hacker do this? He had a 1 in 4 chance to land it, but now Gift of the Wild comes down, and I think he's just gonna go ahead and get this damage in while he can. Doesn't seem like there's much point in using Bog Beam here.
Oh
no! Destroyed the Caligos. Zalae doesn't have a free spell anymore. I think he was really hoping for Malagos to potentially give him the spell that he could use and cast for free.
Yeah.
Reno, what are you doing?
That is brutal. We're starting to approach the territory of the Hail Mary Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. He can also go for Arcane Breath here, maybe look for a Flame Strike or a Blizzard, something to clear this out. Power of Creation's not good enough.
Yeah. Is he going to look for a Malagos spell? It doesn't seem like it would be enough at this point.
Yeah, it would just have to be Frost Nova.
Right.
That would be the only out.
With the 29th card being drawn next turn, I'm pretty sure Zalae knows that Language Hacker has a very high chance. Oh, Frost Nova. A very high chance for Savroor next turn.
Yeah. He does hit the Frost Nova, and I think this is better than going for the Alexstrasza Hail Mary now, because it's more likely that you hit Frost Nova here than it's likely that you hit what exactly Deathwing. Dragon Queen Alexstrasza should be saved for the very, very last thing that you try, because in this situation, the only thing that would save him from that card would be the Deathwing, and then you give up the rest of your hand. So, well, I mean, this is a little awkward just because he can't do anything. I mean, he could remove some stuff if he wanted to.
He could kill his own minion and then play.
He could kill his own minion, but then if Zalae somehow has another freeze and their board is full, all of his portals are could have the potential to just be done.
Right. I believe Zalae still has option for his normal Frost Nova.
What was the last card?
The last card in the Language Hacker's deck?
Yeah.
It could be just another really cheap card, like
it's a Bog Beam.
Yeah, like Ironbark or Bog Beam, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Plague of Madness. Not enough to save Zalae here. Rolling Fireball removes 2 things. Power of Creation, if it gets Gyrocopter, would be really sick.
It would be.
If I could just cast that.
But he'd still die.
Yeah, he would remove 4 with the Gyrocopters, he'd freeze 2, and then he'd have to swing with 1. And he knows that what's left in the deck, so he knows that he'd just be dead to Hero Power, Moonfire, or Savage Roar if he does that play, because he has no mana to do anything else. So it is Hail Mary Alexstrasza time.
Yep, Language Hacker, happy to see it, because that's usually a last-ditch effort. And with his Rottenness Drake, solid but not amazing. And with this Dream card from Ysera, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to stabilize. Language Hacker, 2 back-to-back wins. That is massive here for Language Hacker. And with the Demon Hunter banned, it means that Rogue has to deal with Druid. Oh boy. I mean, Rogue's been doing great, but Druid is very strong. It looks kind of unstoppable right now, TJ.
Yeah, it honestly does, and we haven't even got to see the Ysera Unleashed in action, which it is for the decks that pack a little bit of extra removal to have another big wave. And it honestly seemed like Zalae had turned the corner there. It seemed like he was in a good spot once he was able to Reno the board, but then, a couple of things went very, very wrong as he unidentified contracts his own Caligos to remove from the board a turn where he was hoping to be able to have a big impact with like Power of Creation, still have the mana left over to do anything else. So kind of a rough outcome there, but I think he did as best he could. I liked his setup for the Reno. That was solid, knowing that he could take a little bit of hits and hold on to the coin to make sure that it came out right at the specific time. So we'll see if Language Hacker can complete a 3-0. Going into game 3 here, Druid once again, and Zalae, last deck remaining. It's the Rogue. He's got to win 3 in a row with Rogue if he wants to make it through.
Yeah, Rogue can do it, but it just feels like this is one of Rogue's harder matchups. I do think Galakrond Rogue I mean, can just beat any deck. Like, let's not make it out as if Rogue has unwinnable matchups. There's no such thing in the history of this class. But it does seem like they have particularly difficult time removing big Druid boards. Also because, Rogue does let their opponents set up a little bit because they're busy, developing their 1 to 2 drops and kind of getting the Lackey set up and invoking Galakron, and then have these crazy swing turns. If anything, Spell Druid kind of feels just like a faster version of Galakron Rogue, so to speak, where you get a bunch of free cards and a giant swing turn to develop a board that can't be answered. But Druid just seems way more consistent at it right now.
Yeah, it does. And I'm looking at the data, and it seems like Rogue across all 3 regions has a 40% win rate with a 25-game sample size.
Yep.
In week 2, which is, now granted, that's a lot of different rogues. There's Secret Galakron, there's the Stealth Galakron, there's the Questing Galakron, there's the Highlander with secrets, there's Highlander without secrets. There's a lot of different variations, all centered around kind of the same general stuff, which is Galakron and Heightsper and Togwaggle. And a lot of different tech cards too. I'm curious if players, if they expect a lot of Druid, are going to start taking more of the what's the card called? I believe Waste Warden. Kills all minions of the same type to try and counter Druid. It's like kind of similar to Flick in that regard.
Yeah, Flick Skyshiv, I think, is probably one of the more important cards. But, TJ, you and I were actually practicing this matchup yesterday, too. I had what felt like the ideal opening hand for Rogue and had Flick Skyshiv. Like, I had the curve 1 through 6. I had Flick Skyshiv with Shadow Step, and I still lost. I couldn't handle it. It was just too much. Like, okay, I can kill the first half of the board, but they're Soul of the Forest. And then, like, I don't have enough mana to Flick Skyshiv and Shadow Step and then do something impactful. I even got good lackeys. Like, I got Kobold Lackey and the Goblin Lackey similar to Zalae, so I was, like, killing off a bunch of stuff. And I was like, if I can just survive this big push on turn 6 or turn 5, because you were ramping, it felt like I was going to be able to have clear skies, but I just didn't get that chance.
Yeah, the best way I could describe it is if the Druid draws the nuts, there is 0% chance that the Rogue wins. If the Rogue draws the nuts, there's still a decent % chance that the Druid wins, which is problematic, right? If you draw your best stuff and you still lose, that's a rough position to be in. Now, granted, you can have tech cards that improve it, but with the way these lineups are built, Zalae even has some things that are a little bit slower or more situational, and the Shadow Jeweler Hernar on the left side, that's one of those situational cards where it doesn't do much unless you're drawing through your secrets. Obviously, it's fantastic when you are, because you essentially get infinite value out of a single card. But if you don't and it's stranded, it can often feel like you just have a dead card in hand, and that's essentially what it is. But right now, lnguagehackr not hitting ramp. He does have a lot of good follow-up. He's got Glowfly Swarm coming into the next turn, and Kael'thas eventually. So Zalae needs to kind of just try and build as big of a board as he can to try and preemptively fight against what he knows is coming from lnguagehackr.
Yep, and lnguagehackr just has to dump cards. This might be a game where realistically we might see that painful point where Kael'thas costing 7. Because lnguagehackr does have really good plays with the Glowfly Swarm next turn, but if that somehow gets answered, he would be sitting on a completely dead turn, and that might give Zalae that small window of opportunity. Whoa, never mind. Back-to-back Glowfly Swarms. Yeah, this reminds me of how Rogue did have some AoE tools back when Blade Flurry was good. They released cards like Dark Iron Skulker, but now it feels like Rogue can't even deal with a single wave of 2/2s unless they preemptively have the board. And Zalae does have the board, but he still wouldn't be able to answer all of it. He'd be able to backstab and Faceless Corruptor to remove a good portion of it.
It's actually not the worst clear in the world. but it just feels so bad just spending so many resources just trying to get over one card from your opponent. But yeah, he can clear off, what, 4 of these? Which is a decent position to be in.
Yep. And Faceless Sculptor removing 3 minions on the board does mean that Language Hacker could do it all again. He could trade everything in and then just Glowfly Swarm again. And now Zalae doesn't have anything on the board. And if that ends up happening and Zalae just removes the board entirely somehow, Zalae then has Kael'thas and all those cards activate. Ironbark and Bogbeam become free, along with Moonfire.
It is going into the Flick turn, though. So Language Hacker might be thinking about deviating from Glowfly Swarm, waiting for Kael'thas and more resiliency with Soul of the Forest to go off with this second Glowfly Swarm, because if he full trades and Glowfly Swarm and gets flicked, he has no development whatsoever. And I don't know if that's a risk that he's willing to take. He might want to, like, say, cash in on a like Power of the Wild Soul of the Forest turn here. And then that way, you know, once he can go off with a Kael'thas turn, which is pretty much next turn, honestly, then he could try and make it more resilient, or, you know, wait until he gets some bigger stuff so that he doesn't get punished as much by the Flick Sky Shoot.
Yeah, you're right. Zalae's been holding the Hanar on the far left of his hand for the entire game. So Language Hacker thinks, well, you know, I could play the odds and try to just, you know, say if you have it, you have it, because Flick is a one-of. But the safer and responsible, and quite frankly, the better play is what he's doing right now. So a good spot by Language Hacker to be safe while still applying pressure. And Zalae's turn again, very inefficient.
Yeah, survive long enough to be able to pick up the tools you need to swing the game. And using all of your resources to clear off board after board is how you do that. And so now Language Hacker does have Kael'thas opportunity. He go Kael'thas, 0 mana spell, 0 mana spell overflow, and then if he picks up another 0 mana spell, he could go for another reset. And we'll see if that's going to be the play. Though he doesn't really have, unless he gets the nuts from this overflow, he doesn't have a way to develop and then also play around the Flick like he wanted to. I guess he plays around the Flick in the sense that with Kael'thas and the actual Power of the Wild token on board, he will have a board after it comes out, but...
Time waits for no one.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
So now he does.
Oh, boy.
Oh my
Language
God.
Hacker might not have enough time, TJ.
He's got to go.
Got to go quickly.
Go fight plus the Fungal Fortunes.
Right. He's just ripping it. You know, he probably doesn't.
Force. Okay.
He probably doesn't have enough time to see the overflow action. And Language Hacker recognizing that this could have gone way better if he had a little bit more time. And I totally understand the need to think things through and make sure that you're you even can pull off the combos that you want, which is sometimes people miscount how many spells they have, for example. So they end up cutting their turn short, like we saw last week, actually. But at the same time, you're also in danger by if you take too long to have exactly this, which is Language Hacker could have set up what felt like a sure thing for lethal. Now instead, there is this like very small possibility that it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. You can see Language Hacker gives a little nod when he sees that far left card being played.
Yep.
He had probably a read that it was Flick, and now he sees it, gives a slight nod. Okay, it was Hanar the whole time. I'm still glad that I played around the Flick, but I acknowledge that that was the card that was kept.
Right. He's really hoping for perhaps an explosive trap, and Language Hacker does not have any kind of buff to his board. Doesn't really have either scenario work out for him. He's gonna, I guess, sap with the Blackjack Stunner. But is this enough anyways? I think it might be. Oh wait, no. Kael'thas costs 9. Forgot that the +2 mana cost, so you can't actually play it this turn. He's at 8 mana.
Yeah, there's also the secrets that are up. One is Repentance and the other is Dirty Trick. So none of them are really combat related, which means he can just push however much damage through it as he wants.
Yeah, so 1622 right now.
Still, even with this, Zalae is going to need a miracle to get him out of this one.
I mean, this is a class that can pull miracles, but Zalae doesn't have Galakron fully invoked, I believe. I think he has 3 out of 4. And even if he does have it fully invoked, and I might have miscounted, I think that it might be too late.
Alright, so here's the out, Dan.
Okay, I'm ready.
This turn, he goes Praise Galakron. He gets a Spell Lackey. He picks up Clever Disguise. He Clever Disguises into double Frost Nova. Next turn, he does the exact same thing, except only 1 Frost Nova and 1 Puzzle Box.
Ooh, okay. I was thinking an entirely more reasonable line, like the spell gives him like Clever Disguise and he like masks the spells and has Holy Nova or something like that. But
he would need a lot more mana. The freeze is much more solid game plan, Dan.
And that's going to do it. 3-0 Spell Druid, showing that even though the nerfs came through and it does affect cards like Kael'thas, in the end, it's still very much a fearsome deck. And a thumbs up from lnguagehackr and a very well buttoned up suit and tie combination. That is lethal in itself, TJ.
Yes, indeed. He matches his well-dressedness? Well-dressedness?
Yeah, I don't know. He's well-dressed, well-kept. Good job, lnguagehackr.
Yeah. With well-playedness.
With well-playedness.
Yeah. But nice.
Do they pay us for
there.
this, DJ?
No, not me. Maybe you. Well, lnguagehackr will move on to face the winner of Monsanto versus Gallon, which will happen next. And yeah, 3-0 to start with Spell Druid. Not the deck that I thought we'd have too many sweeps for in last year's standing, just because it does feel like there's a good amount of counter matchups to it. Like if you look at its matchup spread, it has some very bad matchups and some very good matchups, and that's a deck that usually doesn't perform super well in last year's standing. Maybe as a first deck to get you a good win if you know a weakness in your opponent's lineup, but he does. He gets it through and showed some solid play as well.
That's right. So lnguagehackr will await the winner of Monsanto